Today we're talking about Mythic Quest, we're talking about Picard, we're talking about Legends of Tomorrow. But first, I was thinking maybe we'd talk a little about Joker and Harley Quinn, two very separate, very different kinds of films, but they've been in the news a bit recently. Joaquin Phoenix won an Oscar for Best Lead Actor as Joker.
You know, he did a good job. I haven't seen the films that it was up against, so I can't really evaluate and say oh yes, this performance was better than that performance or whatever, because the other films in the category weren't really my thing. Yeah, I'm not that bothered by awards season.
Like you, I have absolutely zero interest in the Oscars. I feel like in this very superhero-heavy age, this can only be good news for DC fans. I don't know how it's going to manifest itself, but I think that they might give more faith into kind of smaller budget, higher spectacle films such as The Joker. We can only hope.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen.
It is strange that the only two people who've ever won Oscars for comic book adaptations were both playing the Joker. It's just one of those characters.
Lining him up against other Jokers, I don't think his performance necessarily stands out or that he's done anything extraordinary, because everybody who's played the Joker has been a method actor and has kind of gone above and beyond to fulfill the role. I mean, Heath Ledger died because of it.
Let's talk about Harley Quinn. We saw the film last week. We kind of agree that it was a 6 out of 10 film.
I kind of want to see it again.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You let me know how that goes.
I don't know if I actually will see it again, but I kind of I have this impulse to watch it again.
Yeah, a lot of people have been saying, I think this, but on a second viewing, I'll let you know how I feel. And the one thing I felt for sure coming out of that film is that I will probably never see this film ever again. It didn't impact me in any kind of way that warrants a repeated viewing. It was the lowest DCEU opening weekend.
That said, it has made its budget.
It's made its production budget. Its advertising budget will probably be twice its production budget.
But so, they've made their production budget, which so all of the things about them saying how much it's tanked and how low it's been, because it has had the lowest budget of all of the DCEU films, and it still managed to make its production budget back in its opening weekend, which isn't shabby. So I sort of feel like this narrative of Harley Quinn is tanking is kind of misleading.
I think it's probably needs to make about 200 and something million, early 200 millions to break even. And I think, people have been very spoiled in this world where everything's hitting a billion, like opening weekends, Avengers Endgame, breaking all these records. They will look at these and just think, this is failure. 10 years ago, this would have been like a fucking superb opening weekend. Yeah. So it's just weird, the lens people view this through. It all goes back to trolls just wanting any female-fronted things to fail, to crash and burn. Still, the very high reviews come out, which I'm...
Yeah, I mean, everything I have seen about it has just been people raving about how much they enjoyed the film and encouraging other people to go see it. In a lot of ways, it is a really fun film. It's got its problems. Ranking it in the DCEU, it's definitely not one of the worst. I mean, it is easily leaps and bounds above Batman vs. Superman and maybe even Man of Steel.
I mean, it's in my bottom 3, comfortably, I would say.
See, I think I would probably put it more kind of in a middling range. There have been other...
I don't know how many are there, because maybe bottom 3 is the middling range.
It might be. I think there are only 6 or 7 films. There are less than 10, so we can't really have a top 10 of the DCEU films.
I'd have it above Suicide Squad and I'd have it above Shazam, but that's probably it.
It might be, for me, about on par with Shazam, but I think I rate Shazam higher than you do. It's definitely better than Suicide Squad, although Margot Robbie was better in Suicide Squad than she is in this film.
Yeah.
Which is a weird thing to say. Yeah,
it's odd.
So I'm really curious to see what she's going to be like in the next Suicide Squad film, because they've already kind of released some pictures where she's got the black and red hair instead of the pink and blue. So it'll be interesting to see what incarnation Harley Quinn takes next.
Should we move on to Mythic Quest?
Yeah.
I've been looking forward to Mythic Quest for a very long time, ever since it was announced at E3 2019. Is it Rob McElhenney? I don't know how you pronounce his surname. Mac from Sunny in Philly. He kind of walked out on the stage. I was like, shit, what's about to happen here? And creating this TV show for Apple TV. I was very surprised, but I will watch anything that he's in. It's essentially a workplace comedy set in an alternate reality version of Ubisoft, which I thought was pretty cool. Sunny in Philly humour, but more depth and heart in both character and story, with a sprinkling of kind of Apple TV money on top of it. The season is based on this new expansion to their world, Mythic Quest, and the expansion is called Raven's Banquet. And it's about the kind of teething problems, I guess, and the interpersonal relationships about all the people within that hub. When I watched this, the first thing I thought about was The Witcher, where I felt, okay, this is a strong first step, but I can see the problems here in the way I could see the problems with The Witcher. I like what they've done, but I think this can be a lot better.
I went into this without any kind of real strong feelings either way. It was just a thing that we're gonna watch. You sent me a link to the trailer and was like, yeah, sure, okay, let's do that. Didn't even really remember what it was about by the time we got to it on our recording schedule. It was just kind of like, okay, had to scramble around a little bit trying to figure out where I was supposed to be watching it. I was actually surprised. Because, like, the first episode played, and I was kind of like, God, can't believe I have to, like, watch 3 episodes of this.
Because that was the plan, wasn't it?
Yeah,
we were going to do the first 3 episodes of this.
And then decide what we were going to do about it. And I was just kind of like, oh, it's another sort of, like, middling comedy that's good for the background and not really much else. And then I get to, like, episode 3, and I ended up watching the whole season.
Same thing happened to me. I think I watched them all kind of in a row, and I finished at kind of 2 o'clock in the morning a few days ago. I mean, what did you think of it?
The, like, tone and atmosphere of it was very kind of reminiscent of Community. It's about video games. You have a bunch of geeks and coders arguing about geeky coding things. It put kind of a humorous spin on all of the, like, video game drama and intrigue and stuff, and it was just really easy to watch.
Yeah. And the thing I liked about it, which you just kind of hit on there, is that this wasn't broad. A lot of comedy these days is so fucking broad because they want ratings. They don't care what you think of it. They just want to sell the adverts in between. This was so niche, and it was aimed exactly at people who are probably listening to this podcast. It knew its audience, and I really applaud that. You know, it's out on Apple TV. It's set in like this faux Ubisoft, and they never held back from pummeling us. Not too much, not overdoing it, but with kind of industry tropes, you know. Very easy to watch, and I felt very at home watching it. It was the kind of thing where you can believe 90% of it was exactly what happens within, you know, computer game development companies. And the bit I thought that that really brought a smile to my face was when they released Raven's Banquet, and this team of probably like 30 to 50 people all in were crowding around these TV screens to watch a 14-year-old boy review it and essentially make or break their company. And he was called like Pooty Shoe. Grown adults just crowding around these huge monitors as if it's like they're watching the moon landing or something. Pooty Shoe kind of, you know, talks about his sponsors, talks about his parents briefly, and he's like, oh, this is really hard to do. I love Mythic Quest. And he's like, I'm giving it 4 butterholes. And they all like erupt as if like, you know, again, kind of like NASA mission control, you know, when things actually go right. And that was so true. That was probably so indicative of what the gaming industry is like in the 21st century. And I thought that was hilarious.
The whole streaming saga storyline I found like very interesting, and like I was totally invested in it. It's got a little bit of like meta-narrative with the CW character, who's this like 70-year-old Nebulon winning author who just kind of stumbles around like the most out of place person you could possibly imagine, and he's commenting on the narrative devices that are happening within the show and also happening within the game at the same time. And it's just it's kind of like the Greek, he plays like the Greek chorus. He just sort of wanders around the background, this drunken crazy writer man sort of leading us through the storyline. And
the moment when he's talking to is it Rachel, one of the testers, and his Nebulon award like appears out of nowhere, as if he can just kind of, you know, wish it into existence. Right, these are the people I consider to be main: Ian, David, Poppy. Why did I actually say Ian? Yeah, Ian, David, Poppy, Brad, C.W. Longbottom, Rachel, Dana, Joe Sue, Michelle Paul. I wouldn't change any of them. I personally felt that every character was well developed, actually. Some were used very sparingly, and I thought all casting was pretty spot on.
The cast is superb.
Yeah,
I mean, it is almost a who's who of comedic television in terms of cast members, which is great. And you get that level of performance that you would expect from these kind of like industry legends. And it really contributes to the overall feel of the show. Like, you just have these actors going 100% into being ridiculous and acting like they're taking themselves seriously, and it works great.
Yeah. Another interesting thing about the 21st century gaming world is that Danny Pudi plays a guy called Brad, and he's in charge of monetization. And Poppy basically tells him to fuck off and die. In one episode, it brings the company to its knees almost immediately. Him not being there, him making all the items free. Ian explains to Poppy and David that you get that without him we're nothing, right? You get without loot boxes and DLC and expansion packs. We couldn't turn the lights on here. You understand that, right? And I felt like he was actually talking to the audience in that moment, because Poppy and David didn't know. They thought what they did was the game. But Brad he was like the serpent in the Garden of Eden, Brad. And he always got his way, and he would
very
buy
Machiavellian, which suits him very well.
Because Abathur was something so over there, and Brad is so over here, and it was such a different role to play. I haven't seen Danny Pudi in many things, to be honest.
No, but I absolutely love him.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was such a different role, but like he nailed it. I particularly like the episode where he loses his will to work. Because he manages to sell, he's like, I just sold air for the price of a house. He just kind of like collapses, and David is going around trying to like encourage him to be invested in his work with cookies. I think that was one of my favorite episodes. He did that kind of anyway so well. I really liked Poppy. I thought she was great. I really kind of sympathized with her a lot, and thought it was really funny when she was trying to like leave, and because in her current position she's kind of the sane, stable one who brings logic and order to chaos, and then she went to like this other company, and suddenly like she was the crazy one, and they were like, yeah, no, this is not gonna work, go back to your crazy. And kind of watching her struggle, it really entertained me. Ian is a bit obnoxious, but he serves his role quite well.
He's the kind of typical obnoxious narcissist you'd expect to lead a workplace comedy. But at the same time, I found him kind of weirdly capable. He's obviously not an idiot. He's not a David Brent. He actually had this vision which he was able to communicate, and he has a sense of what geeks want. And so by talking to Poppy, they together work well to give geeks what they want. So he wasn't as lost as people like a Michael Scott or a David Brent.
Yeah, he had some real moments, and I would say that was the other thing about Mythic Quest, is there were some very real, serious moments in the show, and instead of feeling out of place next to the comedy, it felt very much at home, and like they accentuated each other, which is a difficult thing to do, I think.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the fact that they never ever shied away from the issue of women in the gaming industry. They could have set up a fake studio for this TV show where there were 50-50 women and men. Women were, maybe the character of Iron was actually a woman or something like that, but they didn't. If anything, there were probably more women in this studio percentage-wise than maybe would it be in an actual gaming studio. What did you make of, the episode where girls can code, where they were showing these young girls around the studio, and basically it was a bit of a nightmare scenario? And the fact that, women were treated kind of bad, but they engaged in that debate rather than trying to shy away from it, which I thought was a positive thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. It's an important issue that needs to be discussed and has come up quite a bit, like the issue of women in gaming and how often they are pushed to the margins or excluded completely because, girls can't be gamers and shit like that. So yeah, I mean, that episode in particular with the girls can code coming to the office and visit, and David trying desperately to find a woman in the company who could talk to these girls and failing.
Kind of hate him as well.
Yeah, and like failing every time he turned around. Yeah, I thought it was a really important episode to have because it was still funny, it was still entertaining, but it did convey a very important reality-based message that we need to encourage more women to get into gaming and to be more accepting and welcoming of them in those spaces.
A lot of times in this show, Poppy was talked down to.
Or completely ignored, just altogether.
Yeah, I mean, the time when she said Dana should be the streamer,
yeah,
and they kind of ignored her and then repackaged it as if it was her idea. She wasn't quite a Dee Reynolds, but she was mistreated. And I think the fact that in the final episode she was made, I can't remember the title, it was
co-creative director.
Co-creative director, was a really nice gesture. I think it would be nice if people could watch this and think, maybe the gaming industry is something I would like to get into, because it's not, we have a lot of trailers for games, we have a lot of interviews with kind of gamers, but we don't get much insight into actually the goings on within these kind of places. And so even though this is a TV show, I'd like to think that maybe it could attract a whole new group of millennials and lower in terms of age into that workplace, which I think could be really good. Let's talk about episode 5, A Dark, Quiet Death. I really enjoyed that episode.
It was enjoyable, but I wouldn't say it was the best episode of the season. It was a really interesting choice to make. They completely left their main storyline and did kind of a backstory episode that was only tangentially connected to what was actually happening in the present. Although in later episodes they did link it up quite nicely. But it was, I think, probably a very honest depiction of what it's like to be a creative mind attempting to market your creativity and the compromises that come up and the changes and concessions you're forced to make in terms of like what your vision is and what those decisions do to people. And I think the fact that the two creators ended up being pushed out of their own creation is also, again, very indicative of what happens quite a lot with people originating with the creative ideas. They're the ideas, and then when it comes to execution, they get pushed to the side and other people take over.
It was a real tragedy. It was just very, like you said, it was a very interesting decision to just have an episode that had no bearing on the rest of the season, set 25 years in the past, and then they kind of crept forward in time.
With two characters that we really don't ever see again.
I wonder if they might sort of kind of play back into season 2 and they might have some kind of redemption story. It was interesting that, Apple and the creator of this show to have a whole episode that was filmed through, like dark lens filters, whereas the rest of the show, it's, very well lit rooms, kind of brighter lens filters. I like that. And it was interesting also that the people behind Sunny, I think 2 of the 5 are behind this, they've kind of grown up and they have the ability now to tell darker stories. I mean, it was less dark, but, in the final episode where Ian is kind of meeting his son, Pudishu, and that, he's grown as an actor as well, I felt, in that moment as well. So I just like that this show offered something for everyone. It wasn't just all sunshine and rainbows like Sunny and Philly kind of frequently is. I like that they've kind of got new weapons in their arsenal. Some of my favourite moments, I liked when Ian was fighting against the masked man. I liked when Poppy was kind of going down to her team of coders and she didn't know one of them's name, and Michelle's like, oh, it's Zachariah, and she goes to him, Zachariah, can you, he's like, it's Paul, and that just made me laugh. I was trying to pick out any kind of Sunny characters I could, including Ian and David. I think I got a total of 6. So there are some kind of Sunny and Philly alumni sprinkled in there, and I think anybody that watches Sunny and Philly will get a big kick out of this, because as much as it wasn't all humour, all of the humour was Sunny humour. When I have no TV show to watch, that's like the one I will go to. I'll just have like on all day, every day on Netflix. I would give this 4.5 buttholes.
Yeah, it sounds like a good rating.
Yeah, I'll give this 4.5 buttholes. In reality, basically I can repeat exactly what I said for The Witcher. Strong first step with some minimal changes here and there. I think this could be, a pretty damn good show. I think this could run and run. The shame of it is that it's on Apple TV, which, the whole streaming wars are about to start. Even though it's got Apple, I don't know how well Apple TV is going to come out.
To be honest, I didn't even know Apple TV was a thing until I started watching Mythic Quest.
Yeah.
And it was just like, okay, so Apple has their own streaming service now.
Yeah. It'll be at least kind of 5th after, let's try and do this, Netflix, Amazon, Disney+, Hulu. It's not available in England, but I know Hulu's a big popular one around the world.
HBO Max.
HBO Max. It's a great show. I just don't think many people are going to see it. I would say well worth your time.
Yeah, definitely go watch it.
Go and check it out.
I'm enjoying Picard. Aesthetically, it's very attractive. We're seeing a different side of Jean-Luc than we've seen previously, a much older, kind of more world-weary version of him. He's got to struggle a bit more. There are several people he's at odds with, which, in the Next Generation, he was kind of everybody's friend. Raffi in particular is the one that he's got a kind of very hostile relationship with now.
It was interesting at the beginning of the episode where we had a bit of a flashback. Picard had gone into Starfleet and basically said, right, we're going to do my rescue mission. Here's the plan. We're going to go and save these people, countless lives. They are Romulan, but we're going to do it. And if you're not into that, then you can accept my resignation. Kind of as a, bit of a bluff.
Yeah, of course they won't accept his resignation, and then they did.
He's Jean-Luc motherfucking Picard, and they do. The real dagger in the side was when he went out to talk to Raffi, and she was like, she clearly in that moment, like, they were great friends, she loved him, and she gets this call or this email or something saying, yeah, can you come up? And she is then immediately fired as a result. And it turns out across these 14 years, they haven't had any contact, any meaningful contact. So she's not thrilled to see him. How did you feel about that storyline? But also, how did you feel about her calling him JL? Because it made me want to kill her.
I don't like that.
Oh, God, that was...
It's not an abbreviation that should ever...
never, ever.
Like, I mean, it's harder, it's more awkward to say JL than it is to say Jean-Luc.
That's so true. That's so true.
And I kind of feel like nicknames should be easier versions of the names that they're diminutives of. That's just my personal thing. It's kind of like nicknames that end up longer than the actual name. It's like, what's the point? He doesn't exactly strike me as the type of person who would be okay with being called JL either.
Nope.
He seems like he would be like, no, my name is Jean-Luc. Like, that's it. That's what you can call me. But interesting that they hadn't been in touch over the past 14 years, and it kind of raised the question of, like, what happened to keep them from staying in touch, and why didn't he follow up with her more? Like, did they have a huge falling out after she got fired? Was there something else that happened in the intervening time? Yeah, I'm curious about their relationship, and I like their chemistry together, so, like, I like that they're kind of going on this space adventure together, and we'll get to see their characters interact and develop. I think, like, overall, I'm pretty happy with the characters on the show. Like, they're all fairly fleshed out, fairly kind of complex and dynamic and interesting people and characters that I want to see what happens to them, so I'm going to keep watching the show.
I was just about to ask you, actually. I think crews can often make or break a TV show. And we finally have our crew, and the final word of this episode was engage. Then the music came in from the Next Generation, and then pow, they're finally in space. So the first 3 out of 10 episodes have all been Earthbound. And I kind of feel they've played all their Earth cards now. They can now not return to Earth for this whole season. Anyway, the crew is being assembled. I mean, what are your thoughts on the crew so far?
I like them. Captain Rios. He's this kind of mercenary type person, but I found it interesting and curious that Picard said, "You're Starfleet, I can smell it on you." Captain Rios didn't really respond to that. It was just kind of a statement that was put out there, and, like, I was looking at him thinking, really? Yeah. Is he Starfleet? So I think that will be an interesting dynamic to explore further on, because again, in the Next Generation, we got a certain sense of Jean-Luc as a character. We had kind of like a certain ideal about him. He's very contained, very proper, very dignified and elegant, always knew what to say. He made his speeches. I think in this episode somebody commented on, like...
She warned me you were a speech maker.
Yeah, and it just made me laugh because I was talking about it with somebody else, and they were like, just tell me that he gets up and he spouts these philosophical speeches. And I was like, not yet, but I'm sure it's coming. So yeah, seeing this kind of grungier version of the Next Generation is very intriguing to me. I like it. I want to see where it goes. I want to see how the relationships play out. I am kind of glad they're in space now.
Thank Christ.
I know you've been kind of impatient and chomping at the bit for these.
I think 3 episodes out of 10 is obscene. I think that's a crazy amount of time to spend on Earth. I think you could have turned this 3 episodes into an episode and a half worth of content. What I will say, my main critique of this episode, and to a lesser extent the first 2, but a third of it is about nostalgia. Looking back, this reminiscing of Jean-Luc and all these people that he meets about the good old days. And I personally have found it slightly alienating. And I have, like, transferable geek skills. I think a lot of people maybe coming to this cold might feel slightly more alienated by it, but we're in space and we're now on the new adventure. We've talked about the old adventures. Great, fine. Let's just move on. Let's talk about the new adventures. Okay, let's switch over to Legends of Tomorrow, Season 5, Episode 4. I've got to be honest, after I said a lot of terrible things about Legends of Tomorrow last week, and I meant all of them, I actually enjoyed this episode. And I think it's no coincidence that I enjoyed it because Constantine, even though he's my favourite character of the show, he was kind of detained elsewhere for the whole episode. Nobody was in Constantine's shadow.
The prevailing thought that I had was that I would have liked to have more Constantine in this episode. Like, I think I was kind of ready for a Constantine-centric episode, and we got a little bit of him in the beginning, a little bit of him in the end, and that was kind of it. Otherwise, it was a fairly, like, old-school Legends episode. You know, you had your different teams. Sarah, Mick, and Ava were in 2004, and Nate and Ray teamed up again in 1989. Zari was floating around weirdly and annoyingly, and she's going to be sticking around, which I am very not happy about because I do not like this version of Zari. It had an interesting twist to it. The premise is that the serial killer is one of the encores from hell after his execution, and they have to like go stop it. So they go back to 1989 to try to keep him from killing all these people, and then there's the twist that he didn't actually kill them. And there was a point I was looking at this guy and I was thinking, you know, he doesn't really seem like the serial killer type, but I never once thought that it would be his mom. And so, I mean, that reveal was kind of cool.
I liked the twist as well. Didn't see it coming. I thought it was interesting that Mick died in 2004.
Yeah.
So if they hadn't succeeded in 1989, he would have been permanently dead. And I like that they were kind of raised stakes in this.
Yeah, I mean, that added a lot of tension to it, because I was sitting there thinking, like, they're not going to kill Mick, are they? They're, like, if they were going to kill him off, they would make a bigger deal about it. And then, then I wasn't sure. It was kind of like, well, would they? Maybe they wouldn't. Maybe we're going to find out at the end of this that Mick is still dead. So yeah, it added a nice bit of tension.
Nora and Ray, Nate and Zari, Mick and this woman that he found, there was his date from 2004, because it just happened to be the school that he went to. How many of these are going to be partnerships that mean the main actors leave the show? Are we still just going with Nora and Ray?
Yeah, I think we're just going with Nora and Ray. I don't think we're going to see Mick's girlfriend again. I think because she was kind of a one and done type of thing. Yeah,
because I've been wondering how long he has left on this show. So when he died, I thought, okay, this is how Mick goes out. Fair enough. Then they brought him back, but then he paired up with this woman. I thought, I wonder if this is how he goes out. What I'm basically saying is Mick has overstayed his welcome, and I think he has to leave the show. As I said last week when I created my new team, I'm looking for a shuffle between seasons 5 and 6 if this is going to continue for however many seasons still to come.
I would like for them to change some stuff up and do something kind of new and innovative, but I'm enjoying it.
Thank you very much for listening. You can find us on all the social media platforms. We are out there. We have a Patreon as well. If you'd consider giving us some money for some bonus content and t-shirts, monthly postcards, badges, that kind of stuff. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
See ya.